Hello and welcome to the impromptu broadcast of the Bobby Hesley Show. It has been a while, folks. I could not go live today. It is a crazy time to be alive right now, guys. It is a very historic time to be alive right now. I feel like I see a lot of parallels between being alive today and being alive when the Emancipation Proclamation happened, when slavery was ended. This is a huge, significant time if you're a Black American, if you're American anyhow. But let me start off by wishing everybody a happy feast day of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. That's right. June 24th, 2022, in the Catholic Church worldwide, we honor the human heart that God, the second person of the Trinity, made man in the womb of the Blessed Virgin Mary, loved us with, even to the point of death, like it says in John, that he loved them even to the end. And I find it very interesting that during Pride Month, during a month that celebrates two of the worst of the seven deadly sins, the sin of pride and the sin of lust, right? During Pride Month, we have the parallel, we have that juxtaposed with the month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And if you look at Matthew chapter 11, verse 27, Jesus said, "Learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart." Think about this, folks. There were only two times in Scripture that the heart of Jesus was mentioned. Only two times. Matthew 11, 27, where Jesus said, "Learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart." The only time that Jesus described his heart, how did he describe it? As a heart filled with humility, which is the polar opposite of the secular, godless holiday of Pride Month that's celebrated during the month of June. The month of June, the Pride Month, is a mockery of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. But the heart of Jesus is also filled with chastity, a heavenly virtue. So during Pride Month, quote unquote, and I'm going to stop saying that, during the month of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, Roe versus Wade, which is codified lust, if you want to boil that law down, Roe versus Wade legalized lust. What is lust? It's a disordered sexual desire where you separate the unitive from the procreative. The last thing on your mind when you're committing the sin of lust, when you're committing the sin of fornication, is the idea that a child can be conceived from this act. And because a child is so foreign from your mind, from the mind of the lustful person that's engaging in this act, they're shocked when a pregnancy occurs. When nature takes its course, when something goes right, because that's what happens when a pregnancy happens. When someone gets pregnant, that means something went right. That means nature took its course, right? But because lust destroys that judgment, lust destroys the mind, you're thinking, oh my goodness, we weren't expecting to get pregnant. We need to get rid of this child. Well, you know what? On the federal level, that has just been outlawed. That has just been banned. It has just been struck down to the states. And half of the states in the U.S. are going to ban it, and the other half will probably uphold it. But think about that, folks. On the feast day of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, Roe versus Wade is overturned. What a way to fly in the face of Pride Month. Because think about this. His heart is filled with meekness and humility. The only other time we hear of Jesus' heart mentioned is said that his heart was moved with compassion for the crowd. The third and final time that we hear the heart of Jesus mentioned in Scripture is in John chapter 19, verse 34, where it said that blood and water gushed forth from his heart. It was pierced with a lance when he was crucified. Oh, blood and water, which gushes forth from the heart of Jesus as a fountain of mercy for us, we trust in you. Oh, blood and water, which gushes forth from the heart of Jesus as a fountain of mercy for us, we trust in you. Oh, blood and water, which gushes forth from the heart of Jesus as a fountain of mercy for us, we trust in you. And we've been trusting in you since January of 1973, when this horrendous law, Roe versus Wade, was put on the law books by the Black Men Supreme Court. For over 50 years, for almost 50 years, 49 years, we have been trusting in the Sacred Heart of Jesus to rid us of the horrible sin of abortion. And we still have a lot of work to do. Today is a day of celebration because it's a huge milestone for the pro-life movement. There are millions of babies that are going to be saved as a result of today's Supreme Court decision. And let's face it, folks, we all knew that it was coming. But I think that this is a very historic time, a very interesting time to be alive as an American. I want you to think about something. I always, I'm always quick to blame the Catholics that do lots of damage to this country. And if you look at a lot of the damage that's being done to the United States of America, it's being done by liberal traitor Catholics who should be excommunicated and who should not be admitted to Holy Communion. They are committing sacrilege every time they receive our Lord Jesus Christ. When they receive his body, blood, soul, and divinity of the Eucharist, they're committing sacrilege when they do that because they're in a state of mortal sin, because they promote abortion. So you have all these Catholics that mess up the country. Joe Biden, right? Nancy Pelosi, the Cuomos, the Kennedys, the Kerrys, Kathleen Sebelius, Sotomayor, one of the Supreme Court justices. Shame on her for voting against striking down Roe versus Wade. But I'm always quick to place blame where it's due. And I hold Catholics to a higher standard because to whom much is given, much is expected. Okay? And when you're given the gift of the Catholic faith, especially when you're a lawmaker or you're on the Supreme Court, you have much more of a responsibility. Much more of a responsibility. I know it's been a while, guys. It has been a while since I broadcasted, but I had to go live today. I had to go live today, guys. I could not be live today. But I'm also going to give credit where it's due. Thank God for the Catholic Supreme Court justices who struck down Roe v. Wade. There were 6 justices: John Roberts, Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Sonia Sotomayor. Those are the Catholics. She's supposedly Catholic. Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett. So think of it. The Supreme Court consists of 6 Catholics, 2 Protestants, and 1 Jew. Okay? All the people who voted to strike down Roe versus Wade, all but 1, were Catholics. They were. John Roberts, Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, which, by the way, Amy Coney Barrett is a charismatic Catholic. For those of you who come from a Pentecostal background, did you know that there are more Catholics who speak in tongues, who have the gift of healing, who have the gift of prophecy, who have words of knowledge? There are more charismatic Catholics in the world than any other Christian body combined. There are over 75 million charismatic Catholics worldwide. For those of our Protestant brothers and sisters that may not know that. I actually learned that from my late friend, Deacon Alex Jones. He was a Pentecostal minister here in Detroit for many years. And he converted to Catholicism. Him and his Black Pentecostal church, they converted to Catholicism. He caught a lot of heat for it. He even ended up on the Glenn Butler show here in Detroit. Bishop Butler, I think it is. Or no, Glenn Plummer, I'm sorry. The Glenn Plummer show, they savaged him. But I actually learned that from him, that there's 75 million charismatic Catholics worldwide. And that was back in 2002. So I'm sure that number has grown. But anyway, just like we have Catholics to blame for lots of the bad stuff that goes on, like the disgrace that's in the White House, we also have to give credit where it's due today to the Catholic justices who, using the Catholic sexual ethic, who using Catholic morality, struck down Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade has been aborted. Thanks be to God. Think about that. Roe versus Wade has been aborted. How many of us thought we would live to hear that? Guys, I want you to think about something. And I can't be too long on here because I'm actually going to go to noon mass to give thanks to Jesus. I'm going to honor the Sacred Heart of Jesus today by receiving him in Holy Communion, by receiving the Eucharist, which is the Greek word for thanksgiving, Eucharistia. I'm going to give thanksgiving to Jesus. But I want you guys to think about something. For all the people who have all their arguments in favor of abortion, I consider them modern day slave traders. For those of us who are pro-life, for those of us who oppose abortion, we are modern day abolitionists. We truly are. I want you to think about something. Imagine if pro-choicers lived during the times of slavery. Here's what their arguments would sound like. I actually got this from an article I found online. It's called 12 Pro-Choice Arguments for Slavery. Argument number 1. The problem with slavery is that when it's illegal, it drives it underground. We need to remove it from criminal law and make it a matter of civil regulation. So you always hear how people say, oh, if you ban abortion, if you make abortion illegal, they're just going to go into the black market and they're going to get, coat hanger abortions in alleys. And these poor women are going to bleed out in alleys. They're going to hemorrhage in alleys because they had a coat hanger abortion with a rusty coat hanger because all of you horrible people outlawed it. Well, imagine if they said the same thing about slavery back in the day. Imagine if they said, we have to keep slavery legal because if we make slavery illegal, then they're gonna, it's gonna create a slavery black market. So let's keep it legal. Let's keep these black people in chains. Guys, please like and share this video. Comment on it. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Get the word out that life has prevailed over death at the federal court level on the feast day of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Pro-choice argument for slavery number 2. If we ban slavery, do you know how many slave owners may get harmed or arrested from illegally trying to keep slaves? How many times have you heard that? Hey, if we ban abortion, women are going to get arrested if they get abortions. So we have to keep it legal. Why am I drawing a parallel between slavery and abortion? I'll tell you exactly why. Because what made slavery legal? If you look at the brutality of slavery, what made slavery legal? Black people were not considered human, right? Once this humanity was stripped from black people, you can keep them as slaves. You can keep them as chattel. You can trade them. You can buy them. You can sell them. You can whip them. You can beat them. You can rape them. You can impregnate them. You can torture them because they're not human. They're in the same category as livestock. So if there's no difference between a black person and a cow or a black person and a goat or a black person and a mule, then you can trade them as slaves. So there's a huge parallel between slavery and abortion because both of them stand on denying the humanity of the victims in question. Pro-choice argument for slavery number 3. If we don't allow the slave trade, people will just go to a nearby country that does. And you remember last year, guys, last summer, I predicted that if Roe versus Wade was ever overturned, which thanks be to God, it has been done today on June 24, 2022, on the feast day of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, that you're going to start hearing a news story about a phrase that I coined called abortion refugees. You're going to hear people making the same arguments that they make in favor of illegal immigrants who cross the border that are considered refugees as pro-choice women who need to get abortions. You're going to hear about abortion refugees. Oh, this poor woman who had a good time Friday night and got pregnant and wasn't expecting nature to take its course because lust destroys the judgment. It really does. And she lives in Oklahoma, or she lives in Texas, or she lives in Michigan, who has the strictest abortion laws on the books. That's another show, because I know Whitmer is going to put up quite the fight to not enforce those laws, Governor Whitmer and Dana Nessel. But think about it. There's going to be abortion refugees who they get pregnant, and because they live in a pro-life state that banned abortion, they have to cross state borders. They got to go from Oklahoma to California. They got to go from Florida all the way to Washington State. These poor, put upon abortion refugees have to travel all these miles with the $7 a gallon Biden prices for gas. And they got to spend all this Biden gas money, all these Biden petrol bucks to get their abortions because these horrible states outlawed abortion. And they created all these abortion refugees that are traveling in pink caravans to kill their kids. That's what's coming, folks. Just get ready. Pro-choice argument for slavery number 4. Those who claim that slaves are human beings made in the image of God and deserving of human rights are just using a religious argument. Imagine if you were alive during the time of slavery and you said, hey, you cannot do this. You cannot put these people in chains and force them to work against their will. Why? Because they're made in the image of likeness of God. Oh, you're just using a religious argument. How would you feel about that? Well, a lot of people say the same thing about abortion. And here's what's interesting, folks. That's a pretty deceptive thing to say because what the left has worked really, really hard to do, and this is how abortion was made possible. Here's what the left does. They take things that are inherently moral issues, and they try to get as far away as they can from the morality of those issues. And the only way that they can do that, because if you argue something on a purely moral level, if you argue abortion on a moral level, you're going to lose that argument 8 days a week, 366 days a year, 25 hours a day. You really will. You have no leg to stand on if you try to argue abortion or argue against abortion and you reject somebody's religious argument, because every major religion bans abortion. I don't care if it's Christianity, Judaism, Islam, all the major religions of the world are completely opposed to abortion. And the pro-abortion advocates know that. So you know what they try to do? They try to take it from being the moral issue that it is, and they turn it into a political issue. Aha. Because if you could turn a moral issue into a political issue, then guess what? You can actually come up with other arguments that might seem to be rational, because you're making it a political issue instead of a moral one. Rather than making it an issue of right and wrong, which you know you're going to lose, you know you have no leg to stand on if you do that, you make it an issue of right versus left. Aha. See the difference? If they keep it on moral grounds, it's right versus wrong. But if they can make it a political issue, they can turn it into right versus left. Oh, that's just you right-wing conservatives not wanting women to have options. 19-year-old girl starts college, has a good time at the frat party, she gets pregnant. You right-wing extremists, you don't want her to have an option to be able to kill that kid so that she can not disrupt her college career. That's just right-wing rhetoric. You must be from Texas or Oklahoma, huh? Ah, that explains it. You're wearing a MAGA hat. Okay, yeah. You're a right-wing extremist, right? That's what they try to do. They take moral issues and they turn it into political issues. And believe it or not, they did the same thing with slavery. They did the same thing with slavery, as you're hearing in these arguments. Pro-choice argument in favor of slavery, number 5. If you disagree with slavery, don't own one. Ha! Ha! How many times? That's right, Sadir. The Sacred Heart of Jesus triumphs. Life has triumphed over death. Hey, Roseanne, how you doing? Good to hear from you, as always. Thank you, Nick. God bless you, brother. Please pray for me. I need it. It's good to be with you guys today. It's been a while. But think about it. How many times have you heard people say, if you disagree with abortion, then just don't have one? Imagine if people said the same thing about slavery. I'm personally opposed to slavery. Okay? I would never own a slave myself because I'm personally opposed to slavery. But I believe that others should have the right to own slaves. And not only should they have the right to own slaves, I'm going to go to Washington, D.C., and I am going to march so that they have the right to own slaves. Now, I would never own a slave myself. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm personally opposed to slavery. I think it's horrible personally. But how dare you restrict somebody else from owning a slave? How many times have you heard pro-abortion people argue? I'm personally opposed to abortion. You cop-out coward. I'm personally opposed to abortion, okay? But I'm not going to stop my daughter from getting one. Matter of fact, I will take my daughter to kill my grandbaby if that's what she so chooses. But I wouldn't get one myself. I mean, that's why I have a daughter, right? I mean, me and my wife, when we had our daughter, we got pregnant, we decided not to abort her. We were in a good mood that day. We felt a little merciful that day. We said, you know what? We'll let this kid live. We're going to let this one live. But hey, if this kid ever gets pregnant one day, they have a right to kill my grandbaby. How many people have you heard talk like that? All the time, right? Pro-abortion argument for slavery number 6. Forcing slave owners to give up their slaves is robbing them of their financial autonomy. Can you imagine the economic hardship that plantation owners are going to have to endure if they can't own slaves? Right? You saw how much Leonardo DiCaprio struggled on Django Unchained when Jamie Foxx ran away. All the hardship that Jamie Foxx caused Leonardo DiCaprio when he ran away from the plantation on Django Unchained. I felt worse for Leonardo DiCaprio than when he was freezing hanging on the door in Titanic. I got to tell you, that poor kid. When Jamie Foxx ran away, it wreaked havoc on his plantation in Django Unchained. And Quentin Tarantino did a great job of displaying the economic hardship that slave owners have to endure when slavery is banned. It's a terrible thing, guys. It's a terrible thing. Pro-choice argument for slavery number 7. My plantation, my choice. Get your t-shirt, $5. $5. Okay? 1 for $5, 2 for $6. On sale. My plantation, my choice t-shirts, folks. We're going to the pro-slavery march on DC, and I'm selling merchandise. And our hottest selling shirt right now is my plantation, my choice. $5, 2 for $6. Come pick one up. Pro-choice argument for slavery number 8. It's a personal matter to be decided between a slave owner and his slave trader. Okay? How dare you bigots take a very personal, a very private issue that should only be discussed between a slave trader and his slave owner, and you turn it into this political issue. Mind your own business, okay? Butt out of the business of these slave owners, okay? What they do with these black people on their plantations, that's between them and their slave traders. You have no right to meddle. Slavery is a very personal choice. It is. It's a very personal choice. And if you encroach on somebody's personal choice, on somebody's personal right to own a slave. Now, remember, I would never own a slave myself. Okay, let's keep the record straight now. Okay. I would never own a slave myself. I really need you guys to know that. But, okay, it's just like it's a very personal issue for me to choose to not own a slave because I'm a nice guy. It's also a very personal issue with my neighbor who owns a plantation, between him and his slave trader. And don't you dare meddle in his business. Mind your own business, okay? Mind your own business. His plantation, his choice. You bigot. You're right-wing extremist bigot. Pro-choice argument for slavery number 9. Slaves can't survive on their own apart from the resources given by their owners. So until they can, these slaves are just a clump of cells. Right? I mean, what's a slave going to do without the protection and the care of his owner? If he's not chained to a plantation, like a baby is chained to his mother's womb through his umbilical cord, he can't survive on his own. He's a non-viable entity outside of the care and protection of a slave owner. He could starve to death. He could get robbed. He could get attacked by dogs. He could get kidnapped. All kinds of things could happen to a slave because they're non-viable entities apart from their slave owners. Just like the fetus, just like an unborn child is a non-viable entity apart from its mother. Okay, well, the same thing with a freed slave. They're non-viable entities, and they're just a clump of cells. On their own, they're nothing more than just a clump of cells. So I think you should keep them in chains, and I think you should keep them picking that cotton and serving that Georgia Peace iced tea to all the people sitting inside the house. Pro-choice argument for slavery number 10. Some slave owners just can't financially survive without slaves. Banning slavery just hurts the poor. I want you to think about that. Banning slavery hurts the poor. Because think of how much wealth can be created via slavery. Think of how much money you can make if you're a plantation owner. Well, if you take away that right for somebody to own a slave, you're going to increase poverty, you know? So I don't think you should do that. Pro-choice argument for slavery number 11. Unless you own a plantation, you have no right to have an opinion on slavery. Okay? So again, butt out of our business. You don't own a plantation, so you can't weigh in on this argument. How many times have you heard pro-choicers say that? If you don't have a womb, if you don't have a uterus, you have no choice. You have no right to even talk about abortion. I hereby kick you out of this conversation if you don't have a uterus, right? No uterus, no opinion. Well, based on that, you know what I've been saying for years, folks? If that argument is true, and it's a very fallacious argument, but think about it. If I have to have a womb in order to have an opinion on abortion, then why did you accept Roe versus Wade in the first place? Because last time I checked, it was 7 men who had no wombs. It was the Black Men's Supreme Court in 1973. 7 men wearing black robes decided Roe versus Wade. So for all of you no womb, no uterus, no opinion people, shouldn't you have rejected Roe versus Wade just based on that ground? How hypocritical is it to say that you can, because you don't have a uterus, you cannot have an opinion about a court case that was decided by 7 men without uteruses? Think about that. Pro-choice argument for slavery number 12. This is the final one. Can you believe we are still being limited by an archaic law criminalizing slavery in Australia that was introduced all the way back in 1833? How many times have you heard people say that it's archaic laws that cause people to, believe in abortion? So think of Think of those parallels, folks. I'm going to go ahead and link to this. Go ahead and check out this awesome article. Okay, go ahead and check that out. 10 pro-choice arguments for slavery. That's where I got that from. Credit where it's due. And I encourage you guys to check that out when you get a chance. But what a great time to be alive, guys. What a great time to be alive. Now, it's also a very disturbing time to be alive because I want to show you some footage of people who are not very happy about Roe versus Wade being aborted. Check this out, guys. Do you hear these shrieking witches? Do you hear this, folks? Do you hear this? Those shrieking witches that are on their bullhorns, that are advocating that abortion be kept legal. How disturbing is that, guys? How disturbing is that? People fighting and shouting so that babies can continue to be killed. Forced motherhood? Really? Forced motherhood. Well, it's going to be a state issue now. And the crazy thing is, I believe that, again, it's going to feel very similar to be alive like during the Civil War era. Because during the Civil War era, the North versus the South. The North was against slavery, the South was for it. And I believe we're going to see the same kind of split. We're already divided, folks. And if you're fatigued at how divided we are as a country, just consider the division you've been suffering as practice for the division that's coming. But you know, that's what Jesus said, though, right? In Luke 12:47, do not think that I've come to bring peace, but I've come to bring division, a sword of division, to divide father from son, mother from daughter, right? Which side are you going to stand on, folks? Are you going to be on the side of life? Are you going to be on the side of the unborn? Or are you going to be on the side of death and lust and abortion? The choice is yours. Like God said in Deuteronomy, I set before you life and death. Choose. You want to be pro-choice? Okay. You have a choice between life or death. And I'll close because I do have to get ready to go to noon mass. That's right. Guys, can you hear me? Uh-oh. Type yes if you can hear me. I'm not sharing the screen right now. Let me stop sharing. Okay, good. You guys can hear me. The G.K. Chesterton once said, he's one of the greatest Catholic authors of the 20th century. He said that wherever you're going to see animal worship, you're going to see human sacrifice. I want you to think about something, guys. All the pagan cultures throughout history, all those pagan cultures. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on a second, guys. It's been a while. You know, this is a perishable skill. It's been a while since I've done this. I want you guys to hear. There we go. I forgot to share the audio. Sorry, guys. Listen to this, guys.
Legalized abortion nationwide, letting the states have the final say. I do want to raise the volume here for just a moment as
Listen
we
to
get
this.
these live, raw, and unfiltered feeds of protests erupting outside of the Supreme Court building here on Live Now from Fox.
We refuse to go back. This Supreme Court has revealed itself to be utterly, completely illegitimate, unaccountable to the people. It is enforcing forced motherhood, which is a form of enslavement, and no one will stop it.
As you
Did you hear that shrieking witch? Upset, shouting on her bullhorn that children cannot be slaughtered in the womb. And that drives home the point of G.K. Chesterton. I guarantee you, this lady on her bullhorn, I guarantee you that if laws passed that allowed you to abort dogs, that if your dog got pregnant and she had 6 puppies in her womb, that you can take her to the local veterinarian. They dismember each of the dogs and suck the dog parts out with a vacuum cleaner. I guarantee you this same chick would have that same bullhorn. She'd be in front of that veterinarian clinic, and she would be defending those dogs. How dare they be able to abort dogs? Oh, aren't they clumps of cells, though? Because they're in the womb. How could you call them dogs? I thought they're not dogs until they're out of the womb. Caught ya. Told the truth on accident. That's what they would do. They are animal worshipers, folks. And according to G.K. Chesterton, wherever there is animal worship, there is human sacrifice. And if you look at all the pagan civilizations of the past, the Aztecs, all the different kinds of pagan civilizations, they all worshiped animals and they all sacrificed children. I encourage you, and I know it's a Catholic thing. I know many of you watching are Protestant, but I encourage you to look into the history of the devotion of Our Lady of Guadalupe, whose feast day is December 12th. Because of all the apparitions of the Blessed Mother, the only one where she was pregnant with the child Jesus was Our Lady of Guadalupe. And when she converted the pagan, Latin population that she appeared to, many of them engaged in child sacrifice. And over a short period of time, she converted 7 million of them. Imagine how many babies were saved. Imagine how many children were saved from the brutality of the child sacrifice that they practiced. And if you want an example of that, watch the Mel Gibson movie, Apocalypto. Apocalypto goes into detail about how they would do human sacrifice because they were pagan cultures. They worshiped animals and they sacrificed their own. And this is why in the Old Testament, God had to continually warn his people to not sacrifice their children to the demon god Molech, because the pagans would sacrifice their children to Molech. He was a demon god. You want to see an example? Let me show you. And then I got to go to Mass to thank our Lord Jesus Christ and to honor him, to honor his sacred heart that beats out of love for us. But this is the demon god Molech, that in Leviticus chapter 18, verse 21, God forbade his people from making sacrifice to. See how they're sacrificing this child to Molech? That's what we're doing in our culture, folks. That's what we're doing in our culture. Abortion and the god Molech. Lots of parallels there, folks. Lots of parallels. So I want to end by giving thanks to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Guys, please like this video. Please share it. Spread it far and wide. Subscribe to all my social media. And I will end by saying, O blood and water, which gushes forth from the heart of Jesus as a fountain of mercy for us, we trust in you. O blood and water, which gushes forth from the heart of Jesus as a fountain of mercy for us, we trust in you. O blood and water, which gushes forth from the heart of Jesus as a fountain of mercy for us, we trust in you. Thanks for watching, folks. I love you guys. I miss you guys. The Bobby Hesley Show will be back one day. It will be back. But I've been focused on a lot of things, and I've been making a lot of progress in some other areas that I will one day share with you. So God bless. Thank you to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Roe versus Wade has officially been aborted. Praise be to God.